All right, let's get right into it. When I say the word microbe, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of people, it's germs, disease, all the stuff we're trying to avoid. And yeah, some microbes are bad news, but most of them, they're absolutely essential for life on our planet, and they do some incredible things for us. So, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this unseen workforce that pretty much runs our world.
So let's start with the big, obvious question. Are all microbes actually our enemies? Well, the short answer is a huge no. In fact, if you've been digging into your NCERT syllabus, you already know that we literally couldn't live without them. So let's explore just how friendly these tiny organisms can be.
Here's our game plan. We're going to start right at home, in the kitchen. Then we'll scale things up to see how these microbes work in massive factories. After that, we'll look at how they help us clean up the environment. And finally, we'll see how they're basically the farmer's best friend.
Okay, first stop, the household helpers. I guarantee you've seen their work probably dozens of times, maybe even this morning. Let's take a look.
This all kicks off with something called lactic acid bacteria, or LAB for short. The most famous member of this group is lactobacillus. You see, when you add a little bit of curd, the starter, into some warm milk, you're actually adding millions of these bacteria. They get to work, they multiply, and they produce lactic acid. It's that acid that makes the milk proteins clump together, or coagulate, and turn milk into curd. It's basically a chain reaction started by just a few tiny organisms.
But here's the thing. LAB does way more than just make curd. It makes it better. For one, and this is a big deal for NEET, it actually increases the nutritional value by upping the vitamin B12 content. That was even a question in 2018. And on top of that, when they get into our stomach, these good bacteria act like tiny bodyguards, helping to fight off disease-causing microbes. All from that little starter, that inoculum you add at the beginning.
Ever wonder what makes your idli so fluffy or why bread dough rises? It's all about fermentation. For things like dosa and idli, bacteria are fermenting the dough. For bread, it's a famous yeast called Saccharomyces cerevisiae. You probably know it as baker's yeast. In both cases, the microbes are producing carbon dioxide gas, and those tiny gas bubbles are what get trapped in the dough, giving it that awesome puffed-up texture.
And you know, it's that same idea, CO2 production, that gives us one of the most famous cheeses in the world. Swiss cheese. Those big holes you see, they're not just for decoration. They're literally bubbles of carbon dioxide that were produced by a very specific bacterium called Propionibacterium charmanii while the cheese was ripening.
So, we've seen what microbes can do in our kitchens. Now what happens when you need to take those processes and do them on a massive scale for millions of people? Well, you get these incredible industrial factories that are powered entirely by microscopic workers. Okay, to go big, you need some seriously big equipment. These huge vats are called fermenters. You can just think of them as massive, perfectly controlled environments that are designed to do one thing: grow billions and billions of microbes so they can create all sorts of valuable products for us.
And maybe the most famous industrial product to ever come from a microbe is the antibiotic penicillin. And get this, it was discovered completely by accident. Alexander Fleming just noticed that some mold, Penicillium notatum, was somehow killing the bacteria he was trying to grow. It wasn't until later that Chain and Florey figured out its true potential. That one-chance discovery literally changed the world of medicine, and they all won a Nobel Prize for it.
All right, now if you are studying for NEET, you need to stop and really look at this slide. This is pure gold. Matching the microbe to the acid it makes is a classic exam question. You're going to want to pause, maybe even screenshot this. Knowing that Aspergillus niger is a fungus and it gives us citric acid, that's exactly the kind of thing they love to ask.
And it's not just acids. These tiny organisms are mini factories for some of the most powerful molecules in modern medicine. We get streptokinase, a clot buster that saves lives during heart attacks. There's cyclosporin A, which is absolutely essential to prevent organ rejection after a transplant. And then there are statins. You have definitely seen this one pop up on past NEET papers, which are crucial for lowering blood cholesterol.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. We've talked food, we've talked medicine, but what about the planet itself? Turns out, the same microbes that create things for us can also help us clean up our messes.
So, how in the world can microbes help with a huge problem like sewage? Well, this flowchart from your textbook shows the whole process, but it really boils down to two main stages. Primary treatment is basically just physical filtering, getting the big stuff out. But the real magic happens in the secondary treatment. That part is completely biological, and it's all powered by microbes. Now, to really get how this works, we have to talk about something called BOD, or biochemical oxygen demand. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. It's just a way to measure how much organic pollution is in the water. Think of it like this. The more waste there is, the more oxygen the bacteria will need to break it all down. So, a high BOD means lots of pollution. The whole goal of sewage treatment is to get that BOD number way down.
So how do they do it? Well, in this secondary stage, the wastewater gets pumped into these big aeration tanks. Air is constantly bubbled through it, which helps aerobic microbes, the ones that need oxygen, grow like crazy. They form these masses called flocks, and these flocks just feast on the organic waste, which massively reduces the BOD. Then, the water moves to a settling tank where the flocks sink to the bottom as something called activated sludge. Some of that sludge then goes to a different tank, an anaerobic digester, where a whole new set of bacteria take over and produce biogas.
And that biogas we just mentioned? Well, here's a plant that's designed to do the exact same thing, but it uses cattle dung instead of sewage sludge. It's filled with special bacteria called methanogens. They hate oxygen, and their job is to produce methane gas. This gobar gas, as it's called, can then be piped directly into homes in rural areas and used as a clean fuel for cooking and light.
All right, for our final section, we're heading out to the farm. This is where microbes are offering a really powerful and natural alternative to the chemical pesticides and fertilizers that have dominated agriculture for so long. Look, we all know the deal with chemical pesticides, right? They can be toxic, they pollute our soil and water, and worst of all, they kill everything, the good bugs right along with the bad ones. Biocontrol, on the other hand, is a much smarter approach. It uses the pest's natural enemies to keep them in check. It's super specific, it doesn't pollute, and it works with the ecosystem, not against it.
And the variety of these biocontrol agents is just incredible. We're all familiar with things like ladybugs going after aphids, but the microbial world gives us even more precise tools. There's a bacterium, Bacillus thuringiensis, or Bt, that produces a toxin that only kills butterfly caterpillars. There's a fungus, Trichoderma, that protects plant roots from disease. And then you have baculoviruses, which are amazing because they're species-specific, meaning they only attack certain insects and nothing else.
So besides pest control, microbes can also help feed our plants. That's where biofertilizers come in. These are literally living organisms, bacteria, fungi, and cyanobacteria that make the soil richer in nutrients. They are the absolute foundation of organic farming, helping us move away from a reliance on chemical fertilizers.
And here is the classic textbook example of how this works. You're looking at the root nodules on a legume, like a pea plant. Inside those little bumps live rhizobium bacteria, and they do something amazing. They take nitrogen gas right out of the air, which plants can't use directly, and they fix it into a form that the plant can absorb as food. It is a perfect win-win partnership.
But rhizobium isn't working alone out there. You've also got free-living bacteria like Azospirillum and Azobacter that also fix nitrogen right in the soil. Then there are fungi from the genus Glomus, which form a relationship called mycorrhiza, and they are fantastic at helping plants pull phosphorus out of the soil. And we can't forget cyanobacteria, like Anabina and Nostoc, which are super important nitrogen fixers, especially in paddy fields. So when you think about it, from the curd in your bowl to the medicines that save lives, from the process that cleans our water to the organisms that feed our crops, microbes are truly the ultimate unseen workforce. They are critical to our health and to the future of our planet. And that just leaves one big question. What other incredible challenges are we going to solve by partnering with them next?